Number one, apologies for absence. I can welcome you to this afternoon's General Purposes Subcommittee. And number one, first out the hat, is apologies for absence.
I think we should put in Councillor Rowland's apologies.
Yeah. Okay, so it's the Mayor of Wirral isn't with us today. Second, number two, which is a little duck, I believe, Ron, is declarations of interest, and that's just for me to remind people of the obligation, if that's required at any point during the meeting. Item 3, and I don't know what that is in bingo parlance, so I shall leave it there, is the minutes of the last meeting. Can I move that the minutes of the last meeting on the 15th of October be approved as a correct record, subject to noting the work following information responding to the question asked at the meeting by Councillor Abbey about the deck work on Seacombe Ferry Terminal. And I'm not going to read it all out, but it's there on the chair's note. Is that agreed? Excellent. Next item is a presentation that Shane's going to give us on latest update with regard to Rail North and also Transport for the North. So Shane, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. To give a presentation on two aspects, we can look at Rail North first and then move on for Transport for the North. The Rail North, in terms of the two franchises, the Northern franchise is a 9-year franchise and the Trans-Mann Island Express is a 8-year franchise, both of which commence in April, 1st of April this year. And what they delivered as far as the North in its broad principles is increased passenger capacity, faster trains, 500 new carriages, and the paces being withdrawn obviously over a timeline to meet the train requirements for the new trains coming into operation, and also provided a Liverpool to Scotland direct link. Rail North itself, in terms of a partnership, obviously was formed with DfT and involved the 29 authorities, and that formed an agreement which was signed from a membership point of view in October of last year, following the partnership agreement with DfT, which was signed and issued in March of last year. So both the Northern and the Trans-Mann franchise were both awarded simultaneously on the 9th of December last year, and have moved towards forming some of the appointments for the management of that contract going forward, and particularly the growing role, and hopefully in the fullness of time towards the end of the franchise, control of that through the northern cities. If we look at progress in terms of highlights, what did the new franchise, what will it bring in? It's direct services to Scotland, Edinburgh and Glasgow. 4 fast services are now between Lime Street and Manchester. Services between Lime Street and Leeds, 2 of them. York and more services to Preston. It has improved evening and Sunday services on the City Line as part of that package. And it looks at improved service between Southport and Manchester, including an hourly service to Leeds or Bradford via Manchester. Improved early morning services to Manchester Airport, and daily services to Manchester via Newton Willers and Warrington Central. And as I alluded to a little bit earlier, the 500 carriages, longer trains and more frequent services for passenger benefits. This is a link that is formed, and the reference to this is on the bottom of the slide for members when the full presentation is circulated. And what that does is it pulls up the benefits for each station that you actually go in and use the link. So for Liverpool, what we get is the faster, more regular hourly service to Manchester and Leeds. What it shows is new direct services to Glasgow, so that's 3 services per day via Preston and Carlisle. More than double the number of seats into Liverpool during morning peak. New direct services to Edinburgh at 1 per hour via Newcastle. 7-day-a-week service in terms of major uplift in Sunday services, 9 AM to 7 PM. Within the 125 miles per hour trains, more reliable services, free Wi-Fi, comfort for long distance passengers, access to power sockets from every seat, on-cycle storage, real-time information, smartphones and tablets being of much more use for business users, and hearing loops as part of the trains that they'll put into operation. All these benefits form part of Northern franchise arrangements, and that what you see on the screen there, what you see on the screen there is simply putting in Liverpool. You can put in any station, it'll pull up all the benefits for each one, if members have the opportunity to look at that. In terms of transport for the north, what TFN does is build on the work of One North. And what it is a strategic proposition for transport in the north, led by the city, initially by the city regions, and obviously with a broadening remit of northern authorities represented as part of that Transport for the North structure. Since its inception in October 2014, Transport for the North has been working with and alongside other authorities and stakeholders to allow the North to speak with one voice on big decisions that benefit the region as a whole. It does involve civic leaders, business people and transport experts as part of the Transport for the North, and as we're aware, the structure for the Transport for the North itself as an entity has started to emerge and will emerge, particularly over this calendar year, with a more permanent presence in terms of appointment as part of that structure. Part of the Transport for the North Land, and particularly coming out of the report, which is the One Agenda, One Economy, One North, which is briefly on the right hand side of the slide, is the conditional outputs. And what that sets out is the existing journey times, and for Liverpool in particular to Manchester, 32 minutes, as against the aspirational time of 20 minutes. And from Liverpool to Manchester Airport being 30 minutes in terms of the overall ambitions as part of Transport for the North. This formed part of what was and came from the March 2015 report through government as to the ambitions for One North that we're seeking to take forward. What it's attempting to do is seeking, if you like, to expand the scale and quality of the commuter network, widen the accessibility in terms of labour and skill markets, and radically reduce rail journey times between major cities in the north so that basic talent can move around between the areas to secure job and opportunities. So it's seeking to attain a world northern transport network unified and with a simpler fares, smart ticketing and information, so that it is a more sustainable public transport offer that we put going forward. One of the key aspects for Transport for the North, and specifically for Liverpool, is looking at freight considerations. Perhaps some of the initial focus when we first launched Transport for the North, or the ambitions of a Northern Powerhouse, perhaps that wasn't at the fore, but a lot of the arguments put forward, particularly by the city region, about the importance of freight and its interdependency on commuter forecasts and demand on the network, they're intrinsically linked. Network Rail's forecasts suggest that freight could nearly double by 2033, so from 42 to 80 trains per day. The majority of this being in intermodal freight, including to and from an expanded port of Liverpool. This form, what you see on the slide there, is that some of those discussions, persuasions, over the last 18 months now show themselves in a policy paper on the strategic business case published on the 30th of November, and that captures part of that in that slide as an extract from that document, which is really acknowledging the growing recognition of freight. This is a further extent of the strategic case, and it refers to the option in terms of Liverpool. This isn't a guaranteed option about what the options could be for better connectivity, but what it does set out is a recognition that it needs to be looked at. And I think from a current position, we're at that proposition where we're arguing the case for a better offer, certainly for the city region. And this document that was produced in November last year is almost referring back to ourselves that the arguments, but accepting them and putting them forward, that there does need to be a review of the current offer for Liverpool. When we look at another extract, which is further in the document, it recognises that there is an opportunity to maximise the benefit for connectivity to HS2 in those considerations. But at this stage, they are considerations. So we have to work through that over the next 9 to 12 months to come out with that evidence case of why a better proposition needs to be made for the city region. What the slide there is it's a case of what the offer could be. We have to win that case. What it's actually showing is the blue is the HS2 line. The connectivity is from Liverpool to that line with the tunnelling aspects, obviously, as you come in towards Liverpool. What it offers is that although the distance between Liverpool and Manchester on the current network is 50.9 kilometres, and if that was to come to fruition, it would be 67.6 kilometres by utilising the HS2 route round to the Manchester airport and then back into Piccadilly. The actual time savings that could be achievable are Liverpool to Piccadilly in 20 minutes, Liverpool to Manchester airport just over 15 minutes, and Liverpool to London in just under an hour and a quarter. What that is a proposal still. It's the work that we have to do over the 9 to 12 months to evidence that, to make that come to fruition as part of the work of inputs into transport for the North. At one time, it was perhaps the city region who was promoting the direct link to Liverpool. What you've got on the slide is from the Institution of Civil Engineers. It was an article that came into a technical magazine in December of last year, and it's really highlighting discussion with TfN calling for a Liverpool high-speed link. So, an independent institution which the government would often refer to for advice from an institution on infrastructure or resilience on a national basis. So, what it's starting to do is that momentum towards that consideration and those different views as to the benefits of that consideration of direct links into Liverpool, part of the case, and certainly part of the case we want to press over the next year. The key messages are there's not enough infrastructure between Liverpool and Manchester to meet our needs now or in the future. New passenger capacity through Rail North is very welcome. However, we still need more passenger and more capacity for freight. Superport is coming online. It makes Liverpool the port for the North. So part of the argument for getting the North-South balance payments more in equilibrium is to maximise the benefit that the port offers for the North. We've still got the arguments about exports coming into the southern ports and travelling up through the UK. There's benefits there for both South, Birmingham, the Midlands, not to have those journeys on the highway. There's investment that would have to go in with those journeys on the highway. It is worth recalling that certainly on the motorways, 40%, near 40% of traffic is freight. So one of the aspects is to try and manage those routes, bring the imports in at the best place. Look at some of the developments we've done, obviously around Warrington, on some of the logistic storage, and therefore in this day and age there's a lot of planning for manufacturers to bring in the shortest distance, maintain the minimum of spare capacity, and it's just in time approach is what's needed. And part of the solution we're bringing here is part of answering that question. A key part of it, and just touching on a little bit earlier, where we're saying we need at the moment to provide the evidence over the 9 to 10 months. And part of that is the campaign, a consistent campaign, a consistent message about the offer that Liverpool is seeking. So the Linking Liverpool is now a campaign for a new dedicated twin track line connection to Goulburn, a new station for Liverpool on Lime Street footprint, delivering for Liverpool and Manchester journey time to 20 minutes, full connectivity for H2, so that Liverpool is fully integrated into that network, and that will be done if the evidence is proven over the next 12 months that half the infrastructure is in place, we're connecting through to existing infrastructure that forms part of HS2. And it's to be delivered in the first phase of the programme. It's achievable. There is alternative infrastructure, major infrastructure, over on the eastern side of TFN, but it's got significant complexity, significant time constraints. That doesn't mean the offer here, if it was proven, it's certainly not an easy option, but it is an achievable option. All this captures was part of the link-up and the campaigning that started earlier last year, and just picks up one of the events that we've held in Mann Island. When we look at the next steps, one of the aspects was the National Infrastructure Commission called for evidence. Members approved Liverpool City Region's response last week, and that's now with them. We've also been lobbying in all sorts of spheres, both members and officers, to get other businesses to respond to that. And we'll see with the fullness of time how successful that's been. We're looking at the Liverpool Linking campaign, and particularly active over this period of 3 months to support the objectives that we've just discussed. There's a large business scale event which is scheduled later at the late end of January. We're looking at media launch to achieve those objectives, and the social media and news push to try and get the single voice, single message, clarity for what Liverpool City Region is looking for. Stakeholder consultations will continue through DFT, Infrastructure Commission, TFN, Northern Partners, MPs briefings and backing notes to support the approach, and therefore that we'll look to deliver for the combined authority a single, clear message on what the City Region is seeking to address in terms of that direct link to maximise the transport for the North, which is a common agenda on this aspect. Just finally, there's a great deal of information that sits behind both either Rail North or Transport North, so that for members there's a couple of reference links to look when there's, if you're minded to look at further into the background details. And also, as part of the presentation, we've given little links in on particular slides, where if you wanted to have a look at the station, what's the impact on a particular station, members have the opportunity to have a look at that. That's it, a brief summary, Chair.
Brilliant, thanks for that, Shane. I've certainly got Ron, and then I've got Gordon and Terry.
Thank you, James, for that presentation. But I think we have to be mindful that lots of these things are aspiration, short term, because a lot of depend on other factors like some cascading coaches down the parts of the country to allow the expansion of the network. So I think it's not just as straightforward as it seems. We're going to have all these links to Scotland and everywhere else straight off the bat. There's lots of things to deliver. One
we certainly can make sure that, as another key local stakeholder, the Port Health Authority are included within that process. I think that's really important. I just wanted to also pick up on the point that you made about the new services that will be coming. They started off as our aspirations, absolutely. They're now contractual obligations. First Group running Trans-Pennine Express and Arriva and Northern Rail, and they've signed up to those contracts. The ink is now dry on those, have to deliver them. And certainly in terms of things like when the Liverpool to Newcastle service is extended up to Edinburgh from December 2017, and when the new Glasgow services are introduced from December 2018, yes, they are dependent on new rolling stock coming to the area that has been ordered, but the point is that if First Group in that example don't deliver that, they will face some significant financial penalties. So their aspirations, they were always dreams, but they will be becoming realities. So yeah, I think it's a big pat on the back for all of us for getting to that stage.
Thank you for that, Chair. That's what I was trying to do, was to say the costs that maybe haven't given. Thank you.
Okay, Gordon and then Terry.
Thank you very much, Chair. The first thing is the Linking Liverpool campaign. I really would like to say that I don't think there's a campaign that's more important for the future financial well-being and the economy for Merseyside as a whole than that campaign, and we can get updates on that. I'm sure members here would welcome it. There was a lot of referrals in the report chain about freight, and I think that's an important thing in the logistics industry, looking at different things that are happening. I know that we've seen the last year has been the highest year on record for sales of private vehicles. It's going to be hitting the roads. More and more the freight industry will be hitting the areas on motorways where there will be great congestion. So we now see that the freight arm of Eurotunnel have run a train last year from Birmingham, from their logistics place, into the docks. I just wonder why in the presentation we've had, we're talking about 2033, when we've already got what seems to be a viable commercial route going to be operated, and increasing those numbers of journeys which you illustrated would go from somewhere 40 to 80. I can see that being increased, and I can see that being increased hopefully before 2030. And so I don't know if you're aware of the Tunnel's freight arm, GB Rail, but they're certainly moving in that direction to not have to transport things across the country, as the colleague had illustrated, but to be able to move from Birmingham into the city, which I know is an aspiration for Mr. Rogers to have seen, that we take away those kind of barriers where we see the CO2 emissions going across. So 2033 seems an awful long time to me to be getting this information, and we are where we are. I'll let you answer now, so you don't keep going.
Well, one of the first answers I was going to say is that one of the streams of work that we've got for Transport for the North is looking at freight across the north. And Merseytravel is the lead authority on behalf of the north. Now, part of that work, the first draft of that report is due out within the next 4 weeks, and that looks at, with evidence on the demand and future demand for freight across the north in terms of what the solutions may or not be on that side. So what I would say to you, part of that, because we're dealing with all the cities on their behalf, that we'd have to look at that and then look at the implications coming out of that, and that no doubt would be a report to this committee with that detailed evidence that would come through. So I think the comment about what timelines would be and where the demands would be that we'd look to see that report, review that report, and see what the evidence base is there before we come up with solutions, indicative timelines of what we might do to alleviate that. So I'm not disputing your comment about at later date and what that may mean. I'm just meaning if we just hold back and take through that report and give it the detailed consideration it will need to see what is the right offer, not just for the Liverpool City region, but for Transport for the North. I don't know if you've got anything to add, Frank.
You're welcome, please, Chair. There's a stakeholder reference group meeting taking place at the moment in Leeds in respect of the Northern Transport's strategies freight logistics study. As Shane's touched on, we're leading on that. Shane touched on in his report about the potential for the west-east connectivity and the north-south connectivity. It's the release of freight capacity that that new line creates that will be the bit that maximises the potential for the port to deliver within that. There has been a northern ports freight study that's been undertaken by Network Rail, and part of the outcome from that particular study is some of the things that we've talked about previously about developments in Canada Dock, the desire to increase speeds into the port and look at twin track and some of the elements of that. So it's not anticipated that nothing will happen between now and 2033. What we're trying to get through this process is the long-term strategy is determined, but then elements of that strategy are different between now and 2033, so we're getting ongoing and incremental benefits from it.
Okay. Terry?
Yeah, I want to thank Shane for somebody who's in the first year on Merseytravel. It's given me great energy at the start of it, to where the plan is now. I see this as a long-term aspirations. There's nothing wrong with our long-term aspirations. And as far as I'm concerned, we are a key stakeholder in regards to what happens there. I see this being great opportunities on changing towns as well. And I'm glad that you're saying you're constantly changing, because the aspirations need to be greater if they need to be, but also they have to be realistic as well. You're talking about greater connectivity and the capacity, which means greater towns for businesses as well as passengers. You talk about wider opportunities for passengers and for freight, not just for the port of Liverpool, it's for the whole of the North West, isn't it? The whole of the North West, which means more businesses, more jobs, greater connectivity means businesses are stable here in the North West and are making greater opportunities. So why should they move? I think stability is really, really important in the times we're going through. So it's important that the businesses that are here are happy with what they get and how they're reaching their customers. We need to constantly move with the times and get the offer that is the best for all of us. The North West, I believe, will open and create opportunities themselves on getting the offer that's best on the table. So this plan clearly can be seen that we can't stand still. We need to be a key stakeholder and shelter this economic growth. And it's important for us and the city region to get the best offer possible. And seriously, this says to me that we can get the best offer possible, because that's all you're saying. These are the aspirations for 2033. But as has been said by Frank, you've also got interconnecting plans in regards to freight, in regards to passengers, that interlink, that you're working with other partners as well. So thanks for the presentation.
Just one thing perhaps to mention, Chair, is that members approved our long-term rail strategy just nearly 2 years ago. That comes up for review because we said we review it every 2 years this summer. In that 2-year period, Transport for the North wasn't in existence, or it was just embryonic at the time. At the time we did that report, the freight, clear evidence about what the freight demand pattern, the constraints were not clear. Even now we're waiting for this output. So when we get the output from the Northern study, it means it will feed into our first formal review of the long-term rail strategy. And there are many other aspects, but I just picked those two because they're relevant for just that 2-year period between the first draft and our next draft. So it just reflects the changing dynamics, really, of considerations when you look at these long-term strategies. As long as they have a review process in, it will accommodate those changes.
I think the update of the long-term rail strategy is really important, a critical piece of work. I think part of what Shane presented there as well were extracts from some of those documents that the hyperlinks will take you through. The really critical thing is go back 2 years and we were saying about the importance of freight, and HS2 didn't understand that. Network Rail didn't
Chairman, and thanks for an excellent report, Chair. It is always nice, as you say, Frank, to see that the silly northerners were right in the first place, but then again. The other thing on this, though, is, as Ron and Gordon's made reference to, is the carbon emissions. I know that cost this sort, obviously, quite a lot of money. Now, there'll be a fearful amount of savings on carbon emissions, because if you take the amount from Tilbury or Felixstowe on vehicles coming up north, how are we going to offset the saving, what we will be saving, if the port of Liverpool picks up to that extent? Are we going to be able to sort of claim that freeing up of emissions, and are we going to claim a credit for that and get that credit into our account? Because, it does cost a fearful amount of money for penalties for carbon emissions. And if we're the superpowers, and if we're saving those emissions nationally, we should get the benefit from it. You haven't thought of that, Frank, have you?
We thought about the benefit, but we hadn't thought about making the claim for it. I think that would be an incredibly difficult case to make, Ken, and whilst I'd be more than happy to make it, I'd have doubts as to how successful we'd be in trying to pursue that. I think the key one for it, again, you're entirely right. If we can get that rebalance of freight movements in the UK, there is the potential to take 150 million HGV miles a year off the UK road network. That's got a huge environmental benefit from it. I don't think we'll get the carbon reduction commitment benefit or the financial benefit associated with that, but if we can get the infrastructure investment benefit and the local economic growth benefit as a consequence of the fact that others realise that change in UK freight patterns can have benefits for the south as well as benefits for the north, that may well be reward enough, because I think the financial benefits are going to be really, really difficult to.
Then again, coming against you, as you said previously, Frank, our aspirations and what we were saying to governments years ago, which they dismissed, they're now telling us how wonderful those are, because it's their ideas now. Well, it's like anything else. If you don't ask, you don't get. So, why not just put it in as an afterthought?
Absolutely, and I think that's a very good point, Ken, in terms of if you don't ask, you don't get, because Rail North's a really good example of that, actually. Shane's kind of taken us through some of the detail, and we all know the kind of headlines of the really great improvements that we're going to see on the North of England's rail network, whether it's 500 brand new carriages to scrap those hated paces, whether it's those new direct services that the City of Liverpool's going to get. But I think when you start drilling into it in even more depth and detail, that's when it gets even more exciting. If you look at Southport, for example, how they're going to get a much better railway service with the fact, a better service with better rolling stock, not just going into Manchester, but then carrying on to West Yorkshire. For a resort like Southport to have a direct rail link to the 2.5 million people who live in West Yorkshire is going to be vital for that resort, and that's going to be a real boost. You look at Huyton and the fact that Huyton's now going to be getting direct service to Manchester Airport, which it's never had before, and express services not just into Liverpool, which it's had for many years, but also into Manchester, and going on actually to Bradford, those services were, giving that part of the city region some real improvements. It's right at the edge of our kind of area, but we shouldn't overlook the fact that Runcorn East is going to get a massively improved service, being on that Transpennine service from Chester all the way into Manchester and down to Leeds. For the Murdershaw community around Runcorn East Station, that's going to be a real boost for that part of the city region. And I actually think the biggest winner in all of this process, and we've got some great winners in it, is St Helens. If you think about what St Helens is going to get out of this process, they will get not just the direct rail services they've had for many years into Liverpool and to Manchester, they will also be getting direct rail services to Leeds, to Newcastle, to Edinburgh and to Glasgow. And if you think about the number of key core cities across the north of the UK that St Helens is now going to be linked into, that's absolutely fantastic for that part of the city region. And that's just in pure service terms. There's other stuff when you actually kind of go further down, which is real kind of boosts and benefits. Like for example, Transpennine Express are going to give half-price fares for 16 to 18-year-olds. Now I wonder which area pioneered that on the transport network. Again, real great boost for young people. And we should be proud of what we've achieved in all of this, because actually it isn't the government that's achieved this, it's the north of England banging on the door saying it's our turn and we deserve this. Not just because we've waited patiently in line, actually it's because what we require to strengthen our economy, and that's on that network, still a lot more to do, but having kind of Alex continuing that I think will be a real bonus. We will be inviting him to come to our March committee, actually to present to us in detail about how he intends to implement all of those franchise obligations over the next few years. So a lot that's great on transport, on Rail North, but equally, just as everyone's mentioned about the Transport for the North agenda, the way in a couple of years we've actually kind of been banging on the door and pointing out not just what we want, but actually what we want being the right thing, not just for our city region, but for the whole of the North and the whole of the UK, and starting to make traction with that. It's testament to all the hard work that everyone in this room and beyond has been doing. Still a lot more to do, and we won't stop until the spades have gone in the ground and we've got that brand new high-speed railway coming all the way into the city region. But we're in a good position, so let's crack on. So if I can commend everything so far on the presentation to everyone, we look forward to future updates on future process and making sure that these things actually get delivered, if that's agreed. Excellent. Item 5, and again I don't know the bingo number for 5, Ron, unless you can help us out.
Man alive.
Oh, man alive. He's the period 8 budget monitor, and we've got Jess Whiteley who's going to present this one for us. So Jess, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. This report is an update on the financial position of Merseytravel as at the end of period 8. Appendix A, on page 11, is a high-level monitoring statement of revenue expenditure to the end of period 8, which contains 32 weeks creditor spending and debtors income, together with 7 months employee spending on salaries from April to October. Appendix A shows spend to date on revenue expenditure amounting to 51.8 million. This is compared to an estimated profile spend of 54.4 million, producing an underspend of 2.6 million. The second quarter monitor showed an underspend of 2.1 million against profile budgets, so this is encouraging that this trend is continuing into period 8. As previously reported, a substantial element of the underspend relates to employee vacancies. This amounts to 1.1 million. The vacancies being managed to ensure that there is no impact on frontline service delivery. The summer success of the Three Queens visit helped to generate an additional 0.2 million in income from Mersey ferries. And Mersey Tunnel's patronage is still ahead of projections, generating over 0.7 million in additional income. Additional costs above those budgeted are being incurred in relation to supporting the Transport for the North. However, these are being financed through the release of reserves. Appendix B on page 13 shows the spend to date and forecast of capital schemes with a budget of 200,000 plus. This shows a total commitment to date of 5.8 million and the total spend and commitment is 8 million. The original budget of 26.7 million has been reduced to 24.4 million for 15-16 to reflect slippage in the current year. Merseytravel officers are currently reviewing ongoing schemes and the impact of any slippage into 16-17. The 15-16 and 16-17 capital programmes are in the process of being revised and will shortly be submitted to committee for approval as part of the revised budget process. The information contained within this report will be used to construct the revised budget for 15-16 and also as part of the budget preparation process for 16-17. Happy to take any questions.
Is there any questions, points, Gordon and Steve?
Just clarification on the top capital schemes, where it's got the ferry. We have the pontoon bridges and remedial works at 450. Does that include the remedial work from the lead paint that was listed? We got told recently that that needs some environmental works and the lead removed from the structure. So does that include that sort of, or should that sort of be added to that?
That's one for you, is it, Shane?
not? How would you like?
Steve?
Yeah, just to make a comment, obviously a good position to be in, 2.6 million estimated underspend, which will obviously help